讲点相亲圈里比较现实的东西啊。
In the dating market, reality is often far more brutal than idealism. In the future, as for older women from the post-80s generation, our marriage agency has stopped accepting them. Unless you're willing to consider divorced men, your options are truly becoming narrower, and the success rate is getting lower and lower. Some may oppose this view, but it's a reality dictated by the market. I used to advise women to marry early and not delay marriage until after the age of 30. Back then, many women debated this fiercely, with some saying no one should interfere with their marriage decisions. Others insisted on "I'd rather not marry than settle," emphasizing that even after 30, they could still live an exciting life, and even if they remarried with children, they could still find a rich and handsome man. I can understand their mindset, but reality doesn't change because of these stubborn ideas. Take one example. There was a woman in her early 30s, 33 this year, who had registered with us quite early, looking for a partner. When she was 28 or 29, her conditions were still decent. She worked in a public institution, owned a house and a car, and was relatively attractive. At that time, she was eager to find a partner and had a very reasonable self-assessment, saying she didn't have high standards, only wanting to find a man who was pleasing to the eye and worked within the system. However, reality made her so-called low standards appear quite high. I introduced her to a man who was 1.72 meters tall and worked in a public institution, but she thought he was too short. Later, I introduced her to a teacher who was 1.85 meters tall, but she found him too tall and too thin. Then I introduced a civil servant, but she didn't like the way he spoke, worried that she would be manipulated. Finally, I introduced a man who worked at a big company, but she complained that he was too busy at work and didn't have time to accompany her. For several years, this back and forth continued. I introduced her to at least 20 or 30 potential partners, but either she wasn't interested in them, or they weren't interested in her. Even the smallest details, like finding a man's hands unattractive, became reasons for rejection. Now, at 33 years old, she has started to realize how much time she has wasted and regrets it deeply. No matter what conditions a man has now, she's willing to marry as long as they are slightly suitable. However, once a woman passes 30, the quality of men in the dating market who meet her standards significantly drops compared to before. She asked me why the men I introduced her to were getting worse. I had to be frank with her. "Sweetheart, don't you have a clue? Most men of your age and good conditions have long since married, and the few high-quality men who remain think you're too old and are looking for younger women." Now, she still tells me she's unwilling to give up. Even though she claims not to care about conditions and only wants a good person, deep down, she still hopes to strike lucky and find a particularly good man who hasn't been discovered by other women. This kind of fantasy has made her miss many opportunities she should have cherished, and by the time she regrets it, she wants to go back and try again, but the men she rejected have already found someone else. Recently, one of her relatives got married, a cousin who is 7 years younger than her. This completely broke her, and she became deeply anxious that she might never get married. There's no denying that some older unmarried women are indeed more successful in their careers than many men. They earn more and are more capable. But in the dating market, women are not compared based on economic value, it's about age and emotional value. In the dating market, a woman's age is always the most critical factor. Smart women seized the opportunity when they were younger and didn't let career and money delay their romantic lives. As for those already older, if they meet someone with decent conditions, they should stop being picky or creating drama and cherish the opportunity to marry early. Otherwise, once they miss out, there may be no turning back, leaving only endless regret and loneliness.
In
recent years, a large number of post-2000 girls in China have started to flock towards men born in the 1980s. Meanwhile, post-1980s women are facing the predicament of being taken off the shelf in bulk. The dating markets across the country are like a fire burning close, as parents have become anxious about the marriage prospects of their daughters born in the 1980s. Many parents even worry that if their daughters do not marry soon, they might have no choice but to go to a nursing home in the future, which makes people feel both helpless and sad. Post-1980s women clearly possess many excellent qualities. Not only do they have houses and cars, but they also have high educational backgrounds, and many are quite successful in their careers. However, even with all these advantages, they often remain unnoticed in the dating market. This phenomenon is indeed puzzling. Why, despite having so many strengths, are they still unable to find a suitable marriage partner? Many have also offered sharp commentary on this phenomenon, using a metaphor to describe these post-1980s women as leftover dishes in a restaurant that can't be sold. They liken these women to dishes that not only don't look appealing, but also taste mediocre. Some are no longer fresh and have become old and tough, with some even being leftovers from others. The key issue, they say, is that these dishes are also priced very high, making people feel they aren't worth it. Those without money simply can't afford them, while those who do have money are indifferent, thinking these dishes are neither attractive nor worth buying. What do you think of this metaphor?
Recently, 80s-born women who are older and single, as well as divorced women, have been facing tremendous pressure in terms of marriage. Many people believe that it's becoming very difficult for them to get married again. What's even more disheartening is that 80s-born individuals are now being classified as middle-aged in society. In the matchmaking markets of first-tier cities like Ningbo, Hangzhou, and Shenzhen, 80s and 90s-born women who are highly educated and have high incomes are shockingly being ignored. In contrast, younger women born in the 2000s, despite having lower incomes and lower educational backgrounds, have become highly sought after. Even more surprisingly, young women from the 2000s are now chasing after single men born in the 80s and even the 70s. Meanwhile, many of the single women from the 80s and divorced women seem to have been phased out of the market and are almost completely overlooked. What's even more frustrating is that many single women born in the 80s have recently signed up for matchmaking events, only to be rejected. What do you all think about this situation? I have a 36-year-old friend who is unmarried and recently, after being unable to bear the constant pressure from her family to get married, signed up on a matchmaking platform. However, she was turned away because her requirements were too high. She works in a public institution, at the Water Resources Bureau, and has a very decent annual salary. Her job requires her to travel frequently across the country. Her appearance is also great. She's 165 centimeters tall, with a well-proportioned figure. Although she comes from a rural family, her family's financial situation is good, and both of her parents are still alive. Her criteria for a partner are very clear. The man must be born in the 80s, be at least 175 centimeters tall, own a house and a car, and must not have any outstanding mortgage. It would be ideal if the man's parents are retired or have enough free time to help take care of the family. His job should also be relatively relaxed, with minimal travel, so he can be family-oriented and take care of the household, allowing for more family time. My friend says that she no longer expects the man to be perfect. If she were to follow her ideal standards, the man's education level should be similar to hers, and his monthly income should be over 20,000 yuan. Although I know her own qualifications are quite good, men who meet these criteria are often already married or have children. If there are any unmarried men left, they are likely looking at younger women in their 20s. After all, quality men are always in high demand, and age has become one of their primary criteria for choosing a spouse. So here's the problem. Many 80s-born women find it increasingly difficult to find a suitable life partner in the current matchmaking market. Many men, when choosing a spouse, tend to prefer women younger than themselves. These realistic selection criteria make it even harder for women like my friend, who has decent qualifications, to find someone who meets her standards. Do you think it has truly become difficult for women born in the 80s to find their own happiness?
In recent years, older single women in Chongqing have been facing an extremely challenging marriage market, especially those born in the 1980s. Even though these women's parents are willing to provide various material conditions, such as houses, cars, and even not asking for dowry, their daughters still find it difficult to find suitable marriage partners. Look behind me. In this weather of over 40 degrees Celsius, there are still plenty of parents on the streets looking for partners for their daughters. Their daughters generally have high educational backgrounds, holding bachelor's, master's, and even doctoral degrees, and they also have good jobs, mostly in stable positions in state-owned or central enterprises, with houses and cars at home. Moreover, this batch of older single women from the 1980s no longer asks for dowry. Some parents are even willing to offer additional support, such as some mothers who are willing to take care of their grandchildren with their pensions. Even so, these older single women are still overlooked. The main reason is that most of these women are already over 30 years old, and yet men who are also over 30 and still unmarried usually do not have good conditions. These women simply do not find them suitable. I can read out the profiles of some men I have on hand for you. This man is 36 years old, an ordinary worker with a monthly salary of 4,000 yuan. This one is 31 years old, a delivery rider with a monthly salary of 6,000 yuan. This one is 38 years old, an employee of a state-owned enterprise with an annual salary of 150,000 yuan, but he is divorced with a child. Here's another man with slightly better conditions, a 34-year-old unmarried man with an associate degree, working at a private company, with a house and a car, earning 10,000 yuan per month, but he is only 168 centimeters tall. As you can see, the chances for women over 30 to find a suitable partner are really slim. This is not because they are not outstanding, nor because their requirements are too high, but rather because those men with slightly better conditions were usually taken by other women before they turned 30. The remaining men are either completely unsuitable for these older single women, or their conditions do not match. If by chance one or two good men appear, who delayed marriage until after 30 due to study or work, they are immediately surrounded by a swarm of women in their 20s. The competition is extremely fierce, and women over 30 find it very difficult to compete with these younger girls. This phenomenon is truly disheartening, especially for the parents of these older single women behind me. At an age where they should be enjoying their retirement, they are now worried sick about their daughter's marriage prospects. Under the scorching sun, they are still tirelessly searching for a partner for their daughters.
不要彩礼，我就是大家眼中的大龄剩女。
I no longer pursue a dowry because I am already considered a leftover woman in the eyes of society, 32 years old, still unmarried, and have been single for 9 years. Along the way, I fought on my own, and now I have a house and a car. However, these achievements have turned into disadvantages in the current dating market. Since graduating from high school at the age of 19, I left my rural hometown and first went to Beijing. Later, I moved to Shenzhen with my ex-boyfriend. In Shenzhen, I worked hard to break into the e-commerce industry. Fortunately, over the years, I have obtained almost everything I should have. Not only that, but I have also gradually adapted to a life of venturing out alone. After turning 30, I increasingly feel like a lone warrior fighting on my own, without the support of a family behind me. I have to rely on my own hands to strive for everything. From the age of 20 to 30, I spent those 10 years working hard and eventually achieved significant success in my career, gaining financial independence. But as time passed, I realized that those with good conditions and of similar age had long been married, while the men who remain single generally want to find a younger woman in her 20s who can still have children. In their eyes, a woman's greatest advantage is often youth and fertility. Although I have achieved success in my career, in the dating market, age and reality bring a sense of helplessness. Although I have not yet found the happiness of marriage, I still want to find a man who is down-to-earth, hardworking, knowledgeable, and emotionally stable. Over the years, although I have not entered into marriage, I have gained a lot in terms of personal career growth. After the age of 30, I still enjoy working diligently and managing my small business. Nowadays, I am more inclined to live a peaceful life, go for a walk by the river after finishing work, and increasingly enjoy the freedom of being alone, like the wind. As for my attitude towards relationships now, I just let things happen naturally.
我就想知道现在男生结婚都看什么？
Now I really want to know, what exactly do men value the most when choosing a spouse? Is it about a person's character or their personality? Or do they care more about age, family background, education, values, or appearance? What is it that they care about the most? Because I am already 36 years old this year, and I know I am considered an older leftover woman among the 80s generation. I also know that I belong to a group that is relatively difficult in the marriage market and is often scrutinized by men. People my age might criticize my fertility, saying it's not as good as that of women under 30. Or they might think that because I'm over 30 and still not married, it means my standards are too high. And then there are those men in their 40s who are divorced and may already have children. They might worry that I wouldn't be good to their children, which further limits my options. Some people suggest I lower my standards and look for someone in their 20s, but I feel like I may not be compatible with them. So now, I really don't know which direction to work toward, and finding a suitable partner has become extremely difficult. Sometimes it feels like we older leftover women from the 80s have been completely eliminated from the market. I sincerely hope people don't wait until they are 35 or 36 to start thinking about marriage, because by then you'll find that your options are very limited. As for me right now, I feel that my ideal partner might be someone who is divorced but without children. However, this group of men is incredibly rare, almost impossible to find. Looking around, there are so few men who meet the criteria, and it really feels especially difficult.
In China's dating and marriage market, a recent phenomenon has caught attention, making one ponder whether it is a good or bad thing. Looking back several years ago, I remember that most people who participated in matchmaking were usually older, such as those above 28 years old, or people who were divorced or widowed. Although everyone was aware of the concept of matchmaking, most people did not really accept it. Many even believed that only those who couldn't find a partner on their own or had difficulty finding a companion would resort to matchmaking agencies. In this context, some people looked down on it, thinking that outstanding young individuals should meet their partners through their own lives rather than rely on matchmaking. However, the situation in China has now changed dramatically. What I have observed is that even young people from the 2000s generation are participating in matchmaking, and there are quite a few born after 1997, especially among women, where competition is incredibly fierce. Did you know? More than 30,000 people born in the 2000s have already registered for marriage, but fewer than 200 of them are men, while more than 20,000 are women. What does this data mean? It means that young women born in the 2000s tend to look for men older than themselves. For example, men who are 7 or 8 years older, or even 16 or 17 years older than themselves. These women aim for excellent men. They are fully aware that their advantage lies in their youth and beauty. These young women have witnessed the arduous path walked by leftover women from the 80s and 90s generations. They realize the need to resolve marriage matters at an appropriate age. Therefore, one could say that the post-2000 generation is the first generation of women who have become awakened to their marriage prospects. But this also means that for women born in the 80s and 90s, if you still wish to find high-quality men and set your target within the age range of 5 or 6 years older than yourself, then you will inevitably have to compete with these young ladies who are 15 or 16 years younger than you. The already scarce resources of excellent men are now further contested by these much younger women, leaving the leftover women feeling helpless and confused. Do you think this is a good phenomenon or a bad phenomenon? Feel free to leave your comments. I would love to hear your thoughts. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Your support is very important to us, and we will continue to provide you with better content. Thank you once again for watching, and see you next time.